There's a pattern I see across a lot of businesses, and it doesn't matter whether you're the owner, a leader, or sitting on the board. At some point, too much starts to sit with too few people. Decision bottleneck. Execution slows down, and the business only works because certain individuals are holding it together at a workload that's not sustainable. It doesn't always look like a problem at first, right? Because we call it dedication. But structurally, it's a major risk. Because when everything depends on one person or a few, the business doesn't scale. It becomes fragile. And so today we're talking about operational overload, where work really belongs inside a business, and what happens when that balance is off, or what to do about it.
Leadership today isn't just about scaling. It's about navigating constant uncertainty, market disruptions, and high-pressure decisions. If you're dealing with chaos, bottlenecks, and relentless pressure, welcome to the Business Emergency Room.
Thanks for tuning in to the Business Emergency Room today. I'm really glad you're here. I have a great guest for us today. I'm going to be speaking with Adam Spector, and we are going to go a little bit earlier in the process from where we normally sit. Adam works in the more angel investor and startup space. He's a 4 times over, not really startup, smaller businesses. He's a 4 times over founder. He's the CEO of Chore, which is an operations partner for smaller enterprises, and what that entails we're going to for sure talk about. He's also a fellow podcast host. He hosts a podcast called the Entrepreneurial Excellent podcast, which I think will be very much of interest to some of you, available wherever you listen to podcasts. So we're going to dive into all of that, into operations, into entrepreneurial lessons, and the learnings from starting and exiting businesses, and how that may be relevant for those of us who are a little larger. So welcome, Adam. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. It is so great to be here.
Can we start maybe with just the podcast, actually, because you clearly have a passion around entrepreneurial excellence. So what is it in that space that you feel needed more attention and more airtime in the world, and more people needed help with? What is it that you cover? What are the topics that you're trying to get more knowledge and inspiration out there? Yeah,
look, it actually came from my own interest. For me personally, right? As you mentioned, I'm a 4-time founder. And I wanted to understand. I read all the biographies. I do all the cliched things about that founders do. I read the biographies. I listen to the podcasts about the world's best founders, all those sorts of things. But I never felt like I got a clear answer. Like what makes them truly differentiated and great? Like, why are they the next level, the great, excellent entrepreneurs? I never got a clear answer. So I figured, why don't I go interview them myself and try to find out? And that was the genesis of the Entrepreneurial Excellence podcast. And we're about, 100, 150 episodes in or so at this point, and had a lot of conversations. And the short version, by the way, of the answer that I found so far is just deep, deep obsession with outcomes, like deep obsession with what you're building. That is what leads to the world's best businesses.
And so if you talk about outcomes, do we talk about success in terms of growth metrics, or really making the best possible product, or all of those? What kind of outcomes are we then talking about?
So the first questions I always ask people is actually like, how do you define entrepreneurial excellence? Like, what does that mean to you? And I'd say probably 75% focus on some sort of like financial outcome, right? It's the easiest thing to measure. But there's probably 25% who talk about the other pieces, what it does for your family, for your mental abilities, or just great outcomes for your team. And so they think about it in a different way, but still underlying all of that is this deep obsession with great outcomes. They just care, like, how do I achieve whatever it is that my company exists to do, right? I'm an entrepreneur of something. What am I trying to build as an entrepreneur? What does that mean? And that's what we look at a lot.
Okay. I love that you bring in the word achieve, right? Because I think that's such a, I talk a lot about this decision making. That's just a crucial word throughout, right? What are you trying to achieve, or what are you trying to to get to. And I think achieve, I don't think I found the best word, but I think it's a reasonably effective trigger word to get people to really start describing of what are the signposts that they would be looking for that tell them that they are there, right? Well, how do you know you've achieved that? And then suddenly they'll go like, well, I'll know because of...
I do feel like there's a lot of founders who would say that they might say, here what my things are that I achieve X, I've done it. But they really don't ever get to that point, right? The best ones are always hungry for more, right? They can never, it's not as if Elon Musk is slowing down because he's already the world's richest man. Like there's not a lot more you can accomplish in his shoes. And yet he's still working harder than 99% of people in the world, despite that fact. And so it's not about what he can achieve. It's almost this underlying passion or goal or drive for whatever the thing he wants to see in the world, right? So Elon is easy because everyone knows him, but like, he wants us to become an interplanetary species. He used to care about the green, like making us a green revolution with cars. I don't know if he cares about that anymore. But at a high level, everyone generally gets the idea of what he's pushing for. And he's deeply focused on that. And that's a 10, 15, 20-year journey to accomplish some of these things. A lot of founders claim they know what they want to achieve, and yet they burn out after a few years. And they get bored, I mean, kind of the same thing as burning out in some ways.
Yeah, but maybe it's and I think we could talk about that for a whole episode, but it's maybe the never getting there, because if you realize you'll never get there, it means that the journey will get course corrected along the way. And that by the time you're almost there, you realize there's something else on the horizon and there's more to learn and more to evolve. And as long as you find some joy in that journey and not only find the joy if and when you would finally get there, I think that to me sounds like indeed a recipe for success, right? Because you're willing to change and learn and move with how things evolve. Yeah,
look, there's always new challenge. Right. Every day. There's always new challenge. There's always something new to learn. Even for me in my business right now, it's Chore. So to give listeners an idea, we're about 45 people on the team. We're doing, a decent few millions of revenue a year, profitable. We're bootstrapped. We're not VC backed or anything. So my first 3 companies were all venture backed. Chore is bootstrapped. So we in a sense eat what we kill, right? We like a real business, right? We make money and that pays our salaries. And we have to do a good job to get paid. Otherwise we don't have customers. But I'm learning new things every day, including our head of go-to-market, who was with us for almost 5 years, left a few weeks ago. And instead of just trying to find someone new for that role, I said, I want to go deep in here and really understand what has been going well and what hasn't gone well. And so I'm learning that in depth. And it's something I used to be good at or at least decent at. And I'm going deep in it again, and it's really fun. It's a lot of work, to be clear, too. I'm being CEO and trying to go to market. There's a lot of work there, but there are things we're getting right and things we're getting wrong. We also hired a whole new sales team over the past few weeks, and there's one person who was with us just for all of last week, and I let him go yesterday. He was with us for 1 week, wasn't getting it done at the speed I wanted and expected, and so move on and move quickly.
Yeah, and change is normal and is also okay, right? And I like that you're saying make decisions quickly. If you know that it doesn't work, no sense to drag it on. I want to latch on a little bit something to what you said earlier. The whole nature of your business is to outsource the share of operations that is not core to most businesses, right? It's very important. Not core doesn't mean that it's not very close to the heart and the bloodstream and the core of the systems, but it's not what is the DNA of your business. And so there's a fundament there around delegation and what is it that you all should want to do yourself and is there maybe somebody else better place to do it? Yet you're saying you put yourself, albeit potentially temporarily, in a position that wasn't yours when that vacated for a while. Can you talk us through your idea around where does it make sense to, or where do we need to realize as a business that we're trying to do things ourselves that we shouldn't maybe be doing? And what are the symptoms that you would see that suggest that you're doing stuff you shouldn't be maybe trying to do yourself?
Yeah, I mean, so look, at a high level, to talk about Chore, so we have we have sort of three colors in our logo, and it's on purpose. Those three colors to me represent the three key parts of any business. So every business needs a great product, right? You need something to sell, obviously. Mm-hmm. Then you need some sort of sales or go-to-market team to sell that product. So you need a way to go to market. But then there's this other part called like run the business or operations that holds it all together. It's like the glue. It's like the foundational glue. Like you can't have a sales team or a product team if you don't have the operations to hire them, recruit them, onboard them, pay them. So you need this operational glue. The funny thing is that founders are really good at saying, okay, well, I'm going to get the company started and I might need to hire a head of product or a lead engineer or something to go build this product. And then, I need a sales team. So I need a head of sales or go to market to run that, my CRO. And then by definition, in so many cases, the founders end up being the ones who are doing the actual back office operations. It's like, well, I don't really need a full-time person. Even if I could hire a full-time person, what does that look like? Maybe it's a chief of staff, but I don't really know what that role means. And so you end up having these people who are hopefully world-class. Like if you are a founder or a CEO of a business, I hope you are world-class at what you are meant to be doing. And you are obsessed, right? That's what leads to great companies. And then if you're spending any time on operations, you're almost guaranteeing at best a worst outcome for your business, potentially even failure, because you're wasting time on work you don't enjoy. It's not why you started the business or why you run the business. And yet it's up to you to call up the payroll company and be like, hey, why didn't payroll run? Our team's all pissed. And it makes you look bad too as the founder. And yet it never gets outsourced and delegated away. Or not never, but very rarely.
And how does that show up in the business? How do you start seeing that too much time gets spent by the leadership on things they shouldn't be working on?
I mean, it shows up by the rest of the products breaking down. So a great example of this, I talked to a company. So literally this company, they came to us to potentially use Chore because their teammates said the founder was missing a ton of key back office items. Mm-hmm. Like they were not getting done. So they literally like forced the founder to get on a call with us. Their main sort of senior leader was also on the call who set up the meeting. We have a good call. The founder though, basically he was like, look, I can work 100 hours a week. I don't need Chore because I can work harder than anyone else. This is not a problem. Even though my team says it is, like it's getting done. Not a problem at all. Guess how long it took him to follow up with sales information to try to close the deal? 2 weeks. So it took him 2 weeks and I had to follow up with him to see what the status was. If anyone listening to this podcast right now thinks that is a good sales motion, that it took your lead salesperson 2 weeks to follow up with a hot lead, you are smoking some really dank bad stuff or something. Like that is not how you have a good sales process. And so that's my point. This founder was failing running the operations. That's why his team reached out. He was failing on the sales front. I don't know what happened to that company, but I'm pretty sure it's out of business today. There's no chance they could have been successful with that. And he thought he could do it all, and he was failing at all. Instead, he failed at everything.
This is where it starts to go wrong. Not because people aren't capable, but because the work isn't sitting where it should. And too much work sits with one individual. The business doesn't scale then. It only stretches. The type of companies that I work with, you see it too all the time. And even those who've learned their lesson and maybe earlier, right? Because what you're talking about is the one that people tend to see is like, okay, let's outsource HR and payroll. That seems to be one that people are more comfortable with than some of the other stuff, right? And so people are like, okay, I get that. So I work with often with leaders who've been through iterations of this, right? And been kind of forced to say like, hey, actually, let's remind you, this is not where your strength is and where you should be spending your time. Let's outsource. And then we move up in the size and the scale of the company. But then it goes into spending way too much time on, for instance, talking about the granularity of reporting and what needs to be in it and how it needs to look, and the physical structure of risk management systems or whatever. Because the challenge is, if you are in a leadership position, you sometimes have simply seen more variations of these systems or these challenges or seen it done more before than other people in your business. And so by default, you then think that you need to kind of lead what it will look like. And to me, that's very much a symptom, right? That the fact that you feel you need to lead that because there's also nobody else who really seems to say, oh, I've done that for somebody else. Let me take it and own it. that's maybe a sign that that this is something that you shouldn't try to do yourself. And it's not because you cannot do it. It's about what are you trying to achieve, right? And I think putting it back to, I do think as a leader, if you're setting up your risk management system, you should be involved in saying, I want my risk management system to help me with this stuff and help me make these decisions. And for that, I think I need X, Y, and Z. But then you need to be able to say, now get me that, or come back when you have an 80-20 version, and then we'll talk.
Correct. Exactly right. And this is where founders really break down, is they think that they want to think they can do it all. And they are foolishly believing, or essentially acting like penny wise and pound foolish, right? Many times people say, well, this isn't that hard. It only takes me a few minutes every day. And it's like, no. Context switching is real. And the pain of context switching is real. Number one. Number two, you should think deep about what is the value of your time. Okay, look, I think my time is worth $2,000 an hour. Now, can I go get that money? And can someone going to pay me $2,000 an hour for my time? No, probably not. But I use that as a heuristic to decide, when am I going to say yes to something and when will I say no? And it enables me to say no. And if I say, hey, another example is like, should I be answering my email? So I have an EA who manages my email and my calendar and a bunch of other things. Now, I still look at my email, of course, but like, she calls it down by 75%. Now, I could do that, but I don't. She's better at it and she's faster. And it means she can work in parallel. So while I'm on this podcast with you, my email is getting cleaned out. She's responding to it as me in many cases, all those sorts of things. And why did I hand it off to her? Because I pay her about $50 an hour and my time is worth $2,000 an hour. So I should be doing stuff like this call that only I can do. And that is the rule that I have.
This is where delegation often gets very misunderstood. It's not about getting just things off your plate. It's about putting the work where it actually belongs so that your business can move and make progress. There is so much time that gets wasted speaking around the conceptual, right? So going back to the example that I used for a risk management system, for instance, you might say, well, if I bring in somebody, then it's going to be a bunch of iterations before it is what I want. But if I would take, as a leader, just take my dictation app and whilst I'm driving home and tell it for 20 minutes what I will want it to do and not do, right? And clean that up and send that to somebody who does this for a living, I'm pretty sure they're going to send me something back or show up at a first meeting with something that is 60, 70% there. But the nice thing is suddenly I can sit around the table with my team and say, okay, we like this about it. This doesn't work for us. This does work. And suddenly we're having a conversation that makes progress. Whilst if we were doing this in-house, we were trying to make time that we didn't have with people who didn't want to be there. And if you add up those hours, that is way more than me dictating something for 20 minutes and paying somebody to throw something together for a first pass. Huh?
Correct. And this is going more, I think what you're saying and is basically the idea of like delegating and outsourcing. So I believe the companies of the future, and you're seeing this I'm in San Francisco, right? So I'm in Silicon Valley. I've been here for a long time, invested in 200 plus startups as an angel investor. So what I see out here is the new metric that everyone cares about is annual recurring revenue. So ARR per employee. So per employee is that like, how much revenue am I making per employee on my team, full-time employee? What does that mean? Well, you still need to run these things yourself, but what it means is you need fewer and fewer people, or at least you should try to have fewer and fewer full-time employees on your team. Instead, there's still work that needs to get done. Outsource that work to third-party providers who are going to get it done for you. So you say, hey, look, using sales as an example, I want to go get 1,000 new leads. Well, you can hire a full-time person to do that, but then you got to recruit them, manage them, onboard them, all these things. It's very painful. And of course, you're probably not an expert on sourcing leads. So how are you going to be an expert on sourcing a teammate who can go source leads for you? Or you go hire a third-party service and say, give me 1,000 leads. They'll charge you a bit more for it, but net, it's way lower cost and way faster. And if the leads are bad, you say, great, you're fired. I'll go find someone else who give me a new set of leads, instead of the months it takes to figure out if that person you hired full-time is good or bad, managing them, the emotional piece, and then you let them go. So Yeah.
And for sure, also, if you are hiring one person who's got to do all the work associated with generating 1,000 leads, they're going to be a lot less effective at their job than if you give that to an organization who is structured and has the support structures and the systems, and maybe puts that work distributed over 3 or 4 different people who are all doing their specialty arena of it. Right. Yep. And so that will ultimately be reflected in the price. So yes, it might be more expensive, but maybe it's not more expensive because the quality of what you get and the effectiveness of it. Or you might have teed up and said, I think I need this kind of a person to get these type of 1,000 leads. And then in going through the progress, the first 100 leads turns out that that's not actually the right leads and you need to tweak it. And you might have needed a different person for it. If you've outsourced it, you just go back and say, actually, can we pivot a little?
Well, and that's exactly it. And so this is where hiring experts who spend all of their time focused on a specific thing, by almost every definition, they will be better at you than any other option, right? So I'll give you 2 kind of examples. One, I could probably go make my own Coca-Cola or soda, right? Yeah. I probably could go do it, but I'm probably not going to do it nearly as good as the Coca-Cola company would. It might not taste as good, but let's pretend I even can make it taste as good. The cost to get all the right ingredients and all the things together to make it taste that good, and the time it takes me is so much higher than just buying it from the store. So it's better for me to buy it from someone who does it at scale and does a great job at it. Another example, servers. So if you remember 20 years ago, people used to build servers for their software in their garage. They would buy a server, turn it on, they'd have to maintain it, update the security, make all these changes to it. They probably weren't even using it full time, right? So it probably wasn't maxed out at capacity. So maybe they spent $1,000 on it, but they're only using $500 worth of it or something a month. And then AWS showed up. And AWS said, hey, we're going to charge you more on a per minute basis than what it might cost you to run your own server. But with that, you get all this expertise, and we're learning across all these thousands of customers to have way better security, faster servers that are always upgraded. You only have to pay for exactly what you need. That is a better deal. Yeah. Yes, you're paying a little bit more for exactly what you need, but there's no overhead. You don't have to spend any time managing a whole team and hiring someone to manage your server. And it's the last part of that is it's the same thing with operations now. It used to be you had to manage it internally yourself. Now you have companies like Chore that exist that say, hey, you can hand this off to experts who are building products related to this that are specific, and hand it off and not think about it again. It just runs.
Yeah, and we talked about this briefly a little bit before we came on air. This whole handoff thing, right? It doesn't actually mean that we can let go of our relationship management and building skills. I know that this is a topic that you also touch upon in all your work. Can you talk a little bit about the nature of it at the leadership level, right? Relationships and effective management of relationship, and how that makes or breaks those companies that you see being excellent or not.
Yeah. So look, I've had one thing I think about a lot is co-founders. I've had 3 different co-founders at 3 of my companies. So Chore, I have no co-founder. I'm the sole CEO and founder. But I've had co-founders at all the other companies. And of course, a large number of the investments that I made also have co-founders. In far too many situations do I see it starts off great, like many marriages do, right? You start off great. You're all happy. You're super in love. You're excited by what the future might hold. And then next thing you know, you have kids. And kids make things a lot harder for all the parents out there. I have 2 young kids myself. Having kids, it's something, a whole new wrench in things that you kind of expect. Obviously, you plan for it, hopefully, but it changes things in ways you can never really predict and understand. And a lot of marriages break down when they have those kids and those things come in. And that's the same with the business. And what ends up happening is you have founders who have to have it go through a breakup. You have to buy the founder out. You have to let them go. It's a really weird conversation for a CEO to say to someone who might have been their best friend, you're not getting it done and you're not part of our future. And that's really tough. And most companies fail at that. My former co-founder and I, my last company, went through a similar situation. I will say we did it better than almost any other company. Our investors all said that we were the best breakup they'd ever seen in their life. So I'm proud of that fact. But it was still really difficult. Even then, it was a contentious negotiation of what needed to happen and how it would happen. And so this is one of those things with senior leaders in general that can really go wrong.
Yeah, and it's emotional, right? And I was asking you about this because I see this. And so when I come in and do triage, very often that's one of the first conversations I have. Particularly if I get brought in by an investor or a board member, it's like, okay, are you still ready to give the team, the C-suite, another chance? Are all these people truly on board, or is one of these people in your head already out? Because then let's have all those conversations before we actually try to fix or rebuild anything, or at least know that when we're going into this and have it out in the table. Or if I come in at C-suite level, there's a bunch of conversations that need to happen. And very often, there is a change needed, right? And sometimes the actual change that needed is ultimately a lot less impactful, but it's just the emotions around having worked together so long, and we kind of feel like, but it's business and it shouldn't be emotional, but we spend so much time together, right? And if we're building and we're good at our job, it also means we have passion around what it is we work on. And so it's personal. It's very personal.
It is, but you also know as a leader, if people are getting it done or not, and if they're doing well. So, going back to my example of my head of go-to-market, so I don't remember if it was before the podcast or not, but like I've had to go to market, worked with him for almost 5 years. And he left a few weeks ago. So I've taken over this role of head of go-to-market, and I can explain why, because it goes against some of the stuff I just said about delegating to some extent. But we do monthly performance reviews at Chore. So every month with all of my direct reports and everyone on the team, they do a monthly review with their manager. And his scores were really low for the past sort of 6 months. And frankly, that was longer than we'd usually let people go on. And it was clear he wasn't performing, and he knew it too. And I probably let it go on longer than I should have, frankly. But the lesson there was like, hey, you just got to make a tough call. And like, he knew it, and it made sense, and we were all on the same page, and it was okay, because we had those discussions on a regular basis. But yeah, you should really think deeply about, do these team members matter? Are they getting it done? Are they truly passionate about what you're into? Even if you like them personally, maybe it's just not a fit any longer. And that's okay. Like sometimes it's the right thing to do, to say, hey, go spread your wings or do something different for a little while.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think that what you need to build in, and what you would want to build in for your audience, right? If you're in that early stages, what we forget to build in is some level of performance management also of the founders or the C-suite when you're a smaller company. But you need that, right? Even if you are, if I look at larger startups, right, I'm an investor too, right? So if I do diligence in the space where it's all privately funded, I ask questions and try to figure out how open that C-suite is to feedback, right? And if part of for the desire to keep all the funding kind of off the public market, if that's related to a desire to stay a course and plot a course without anybody else having influence on that. Because if you do not want the feedback, I think we're back to where we started a little bit with your example of what makes excellence, right? And that drive to always learn and evolve and go somewhere next. And yes, I do think you need some guts and not absorb all the feedback that you're getting, but not being able to see how you in your role is affecting the business,
Well, yeah, you need to be able to step back, get feedback. I ask all of my direct reports for feedback every single month. When I do their review, I said, what can I do better and differently? And I always want to think about that. And I'm a pretty harsh judge of myself. And then going back to the point about obsession, like I need to be obsessed with like building the product every day and how do I make the company better? And using the Elon Musk example again, right? Imagine if I want to forget his politics for a second, but as an entrepreneur, Elon Musk is certainly one of the greats out there. And imagine a world where if at SpaceX, right, or Tesla, if the head of HR came to Elon Musk and said, hey, should we use payroll platform A or payroll platform B? He would throw them out of the room. He'd probably say, you're fired. Like, why are you wasting? I'm trying to get to Mars. Why are you wasting my time on what payroll platform? I don't care. I am obsessed with this goal. Take care of it. Figure out our team needs to get paid. But I don't care about any of this. It is irrelevant to what I'm obsessed with. And we all should try to emulate that passion and focus otherwise our companies will fail. And it's, once again, it's too easy. Like I view a lot of back office operations work, like what payroll provider to use. It's like the TikTok of business. And what I mean is that it's like empty calories. I've come across founders who say, I need to do this sort of work because that's what a good CEO does. They understand these things. And I'm like, no, it's the opposite. A good CEO hands it off to someone they can trust and says, I don't ever want to think about this again. I don't ever want there to be issues. Get it done. I'm going back to doing the stuff that I started my company to build and focus on. That's what good founders do. They literally, they don't care. They just know, they know at a high level, to your point, they know the high level what needs to get done. And as long as someone's getting it done for a fair price, I don't need to get involved. I don't care.
No. And so if it's not working, you either don't have the right bums on seat to have the capacity and capability to do that, or it's getting lost in translation, right? Which I see a lot too, which doesn't mean that suddenly you need to step back in and do it. It means that you need to work on your translation. And it means that you might need to bring in somebody like me, or right, or to kind of help say, okay, this is what I'm trying to do, but somehow it translates to this. Where is that breakdown? How do we get better at that part of the collaboration and the working together, right? And that's a different challenge. That doesn't mean like, let's step down and now do it.
Right, completely. And that's what happens a lot, is you need to step down and do it yourself. And once again, maybe for a little bit to understand it, but then you have to step back out of it.
What I heard today, I love how you put it with leaders needing to be obsessed with where they're going, right? Because we were talking about entrepreneurial excellence, which to me is kind of the opposite of getting into the business emergency room, right? So you're looking for what's the leading indicators to get there. So
you should never have an emergency. That's what I would say. If a business is run well, if you're doing, we didn't even talk about the finance piece, but if your books are done well, your finances are run well, you're answering the mail from different states and regulators and everybody else who comes in, right? These are just like basic 101 things you need to do to run a quality business. If you're doing all that right, there should never be emergencies. We actually used to joke at Chore, we don't do it too much anymore, that like there should never be emergencies in operations. There's never, maybe once in a blue moon, is there someone you have to fire out of the blue? But you pretty much know ahead of time if you're going to fire someone. There should not be emergencies ever if you're running your business well.
No, and the businesses that have business emergencies in their operations are also the ones that are unsalvageable, right? Because if you in your basic business operations processes have breakdowns, then imagine how big the problems are in some of the fundamentals to your business, right? That what's the heart that makes and breaks your business. So I agree with you totally there. Hey, Adam, if people after listening here, they want to know more about your business or about you, or reach out or connect or check out your podcast, where do they go? What do they do?
Yeah, pretty easy. So hirechore.com. So HIRE, Chore, CHORE.com. So hire Chore, because you hire us to do the chores in a sense. Hirechore.com. You can also, of course, find me all over LinkedIn, in various social networks, just Adam Spector. On both platforms, you'll be able to find me really quickly. And our podcast is all the places great podcasts exist. Entrepreneurial Excellence.
Great. Well, thank you for joining me today and sharing the bits and pieces from your world that don't actually sound so different from my world. But I do completely agree. You should not be in the business emergency room for stuff that Adam can fix for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And so true.
We'll leave it to that. Thanks for tuning in. I hope to have you all back in the next episode of the Business Emergency Room. Bye. If you were listening to this and recognizing parts of your own organization, whether you're running it, leading in it, or overseeing it, this is one of those risks that hides in plain sight. It can sit at many levels. It shows up as strong individuals, high commitment, people stepping in where needed. But underneath that, it can signal that the structure isn't doing its job. And if that's the case, it's not about working harder. It's about rebalancing where the work sits, how decisions get made, and how the business actually runs. This is exactly the kind of work I do, helping organizations move from dependency to structure. Have some of these conversations, do some of the untangling. And if you want a clearer view of where that risk might sit in your business, reach out. I'd be happy to take a look with you.
That's it for this episode of the Business Emergency Room. If you are currently dealing with chaos or disruption in your business, please reach out. You can email, text, or call, and I will find a way to connect with you within 24 hours. I've helped others steer out of the storm, and I know I can help you too. Talk soon. Please like, subscribe, and share.